Space shuttles suck. You can't fit anything into their payload bays. They're basically useless. I mean, you can refuel them in orbit, obviously, and that gives you an extra, 4,000 delta V. But payload-wise, they're basically useless. You can bring, 15-20,000 tons into orbit, confined to, 3 square inches of space. You can't do anything with them. I mean, I guess I could put a fairing on a shuttle and make it useful.
He said into the microphone, setting up a video where he puts a fairing on a shuttle.
If you didn't catch that, today we're making a shuttle with a big fairing on top. You heard me right, not on the bottom.
On the top.
If you're on the SimpleRockets subreddit, you might have already seen that I built 2 boxwing shuttles already, and not to brag, but one was an SSTO. I plagiarized my own design except for where there should be a cargo bay normally.
There's a fuel tank.
I know, I'm a genius. For the fairing, I just put a docking port on top of the shuttle, then docked a couple of fuel tanks to that. Then I made a pretty wide fairing from there. I think it was 1.3 meters of radius. Now I gotta say, I use the connections window this time more than I think I have on any other build. You press C to open it, on my PC at least. And if you're on mobile, you
get a computer, I guess.
I had to use it because the connection between the fairing and the shuttle was really wobbly, so I just added on 3 struts with some, side connectors. I added on 3 struts with side connectors, side detachers, whatever you call them. So I added them on, use the connection panel to connect them to the fairing. Then I absolutely packed the fairing with liquid hydrogen fuel tanks. But even with, I still got about 15 to 20 tons of fuel in there, so it's not like my shuttle is absolutely useless, but it's mostly for carrying up empty tanks, which you can refuel with a shuttle. I don't know. For the engines, I just used 5 full flow stage Methylux engines. I know, just 5 full flow stage combustion engines. Not a sentence you should have to say.
Just 5 full flow stage combustion engines.
But I used an aerospike nozzle just because, they're the best. Especially for SSTOs and shuttles, because I have to run this at sea level. Where if it was a vacuum nozzle, it would get 100 seconds of ISP and 2 newtons of thrust. If any of the engine jargon right there confused you, you should check out
Tim Dodd.
He has plenty of high quality videos and that kind of thing. I might link him down in the description.
I might not.
Or he might be in a card. I'm not gonna lie, I really like how the side tanks turn out. They form sort of like a crescent moon sort of shape, but it's not a moon, it's a rocket.
Just in case you forgot.
Most of you probably haven't noticed, but the box wing isn't exactly a box. I know, I'm criminal. You should
arrest me.
But I just made the top wing 5 degrees off from being flat, and then in the middle it flattens out so the tanks have more room to fall. And don't explode. Anyways, I gave the wings a paint job, added on nose cones to the tops of the side tanks, cause
I didn't do that before.
And I had to do something that I had never done before and never thought I would have to do. I had to
build a launch pad.
I know, it's terrible. I didn't know how to do it either. All I really did was just added a coupler on one of the engines on the bottom, and then built a launch pad from a wide square strut. I built a rotating thing. I didn't really know what I was doing this whole time. At first I thought I was just gonna make a big square, but that was very ugly. So I added on the rotator thing, which didn't really help in terms of aesthetics, but it did make me crash a few launches, which might be a good thing. I used a crossbeam texture with a high tiling for most of it. Later on I switched the decoupler that was covering the middle engine to side decouplers connected to the side tanks, cause I wanted to be able to use all 5 engines at launch. I added on some landing gear, some aero brakes, gave the craft a new minor paint job, launched it, only to realize I messed up my staging like the genius I am. Then after a few more launches, then I'd like to admit where I completely forgot
the launch tower existed,
I finally got it off the ground, and I flew it absolutely perfectly with a nice round gravity turn and everything like that, only to realize that I completely forgot to decouple the goddamn side tanks and had to undo to the design. That happened a few more times, so I decided to write a Vizzy script to do it for me.
Cause I'm lazy.
The first thing I did was rename one of the side tanks to an easily identifiable name, then I started to write some script. Looking back at now, I realized I could have just used a wait until command, but come on, who uses those? but it would have been significantly easier. Anyways, how I did it wrong, by the way. Don't do it how I did it. It took way longer than it should have. I set up a variable for the side tanks at the beginning, and I set it to true because they should be attached at the beginning unless they exploded, in which case it's a failed mission anyways. Then I set a while loop equal to that variable, so as long as that variable was true, the while loop would run forever. Then every single loop, I would check the fuel on the easily identifiable side tank, which I named a great name, and then when it finally reached below a certain mass, I would make it say something, activate stage, set the side tanks equal to false because they shouldn't be on it anymore unless I staged it wrong, and then it would break through the while loop and say something else. I know.
It's a great script.
It ran perfectly. I even got to orbit with like 56 Delta V remaining. That really takes skill.
You know.
Then I added on some windows and astronauts, before it was prepared for re-entry, and then I decided to make it ready for re-entry.
After I added people on.
Then I spent about an hour just slightly adjusting the craft and re-entering it, only to watch it
Explode?
And you shouldn't have to go through that. That would be a very, very boring video. It was like more time than I spent overall designing the craft. So I'm just gonna summarize it by saying all the problems I ran into. It had lack of big enough wings, lack of enough wings, lack of tail fins,
I just really like how they look.
severe acute and canard disease, an acute lack of frontal canards,
I know, I made up a disease for this.
and bad piloting. Anyways, now that all that's out of the way, I'm just gonna let the footage speak for itself.
While I play dramatic music over it.
Alright, that's it. This is the end. And thanks for watching, especially to the end. That's pretty sweet. I might use this shuttle in another video. Maybe subscribe if you want to see that. I don't know. It's your choice. Bye.